And in my childhood, I was seeking. I used to go to all the different churches. I went to a Baptist church, I went to a Wesleyan church, I went to Unitarian church, I went to Congregational church. I was trying everything. I even tried some witchcraft and to see if that was what I wanted. And eventually, through a long and hard search, I met a man called Don Stevens, who many of you will have heard of, and he invited me to live with him in Holland. So I went to Holland to live with him. I had a career in show business before that, and I've been living with him for about 18 months in Holland. And one day he told me that there's a letter come for me from Meher Baba. And I have to say to you, in all honesty, Don at no time was proselytizing or telling me very much about Baba. He had some beautiful photographs of Baba, and I found it very interesting. But I also thought, I wonder if this is some other crackpot thing, like some of the crackpot things I'd previously encountered in my own search. And I was quite astonished that I was actually invited to come to meet Baba. And so in December of 1959, I started with Don on a journey to meet Meher Baba.
December 1959, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no idea the changes that would take place in my life. But it was an earth-shattering experience. The journey to get to Baba was in and of itself extraordinary, because Baba was involved, had got Don involved in some very, very complicated machinations with oil companies. Don was a very highly respected negotiator for Standard Oil California, which then was one of the primary oil companies in the world. And they were being very clever and buying out every oil company they could possibly find, and they were negotiating to buy a French company at that point, and Don was right in the middle of it. And so every day Don would come back to the hotel and say, I'm sorry, we can't go to India tomorrow, you're going to have to go and change all the tickets and maybe we can go the next day. And today you can go on the computer and you can find 20 flights from Paris to India. In those days you were lucky if there were 2, and if there were 3 you had to change 5 times. And you didn't have all the computers, everything was done on the telephone. And so we ended up, and I think it was still in Don's possession, the actual ticket was 7.5 feet in height after they'd added the change to do it. And very long and very complicated journey, but we did finally get to Mumbai, Bombay as it was then, and we drove up and we spent the night very quietly in Pune, and thoroughly enjoyed the night's rest there, and came the next day to Meredith. And we got there and we were in the big Blue DeSoto, and Mayor G was organising different things, and I just walked around, and I walked up to what of course was, I now know as Mandalay Hall, but what didn't know that in those days. And as I walked to the door of Mandalay Hall, and I walked into it not knowing what to do, at least I'd taken my shoes off, this incredible light came towards me, this extraordinary light. And I just sat on the floor and I started crying. And the next thing I knew was that Baba had me in his arms, because it was Baba walking in the other door. And I just sat there and I smiled, I sobbed, I laughed. I think I screamed a couple of times. I was just totally shredded. It was like Baba just was, like peeling an onion. He was just pulling the layers off one after another, one after another. And that was the beginning of my relationship with Baba. And it really was an extraordinary beginning to know what was going on with my relationship with Baba. The first 2 or 3 nights we spent in Dr. Duncan's cottage, which is, as most of you will know, is over here. And then we moved to be with Baba, and we were in the little room which is right opposite Mandalay Hall. And Baba used to say very interesting things, like one day he said, now, if I call you, if I ring the bell and I call you in the middle of the night, you just come as you are. And I thought, that's going to be a surprise because I don't wear pajamas. So how are you going to deal with that? So I had a pair of loose pants that I could throw on. And he asked, One of the things that I really want to share about Barbara, that to me is the epitome, and we seem to have lost it. I'm very disappointed, but he was so gracious, he was so kind, he was so thoughtful, he was so loving, he was so generous. And it wasn't just like, you know, how are you this morning, did you have your breakfast? It really was genuine, but there was much more in that concern. And also there was the concern that, of course, if you hadn't been to the bathroom and you had an upset stomach, but then you weren't going to listen to what Barbara had to say. But the generosity of spirit, the caring, was so profound, and it's been a piece of my life ever since. It was totally and utterly amazing. There are so many tales to tell, I'm not sure where to start, so I'm just going to throw some things out. But one of the things that I find quite fascinating and terribly important for me is that, of course, people want to hear about experiences with Barbara, but Barbara has been a part of my life for 56 years. And as I said last night at the centre here in Arrangown, I really got to a part of my life where finally I have come full circle. I really realised what Barbara talks about, because so many of the work experiences that I've had throughout the world have been over and over again using community to help people function. And this is exactly what he showed me when I came to the community 56 years ago. And so I'm often ranting and raring to go to start promoting again this whole idea and concept that Barbara gave me of community. Barbara loved to play. To me, this was one of the most amazing things about Barbara. He absolutely enjoyed games, whether it was card games, whether it was seven tiles, whether it was joking, whether it was teasing. It was absolutely amazing. And they used to play this incredibly complex card game. It was really fascinating. And I used to play bridge years ago. I stopped also years ago. And I thought, well, you know, this is very easy. I have to learn this and I have to get this. So I was watching everybody avidly and watching how they played their cards and sitting there. And Barbara then had me join in, and all the men were playing very nicely. And I finally realized I had a winning hand. And Barbara used to have me sitting in his left hand. I'd sit right next to his chair, and he would touch me constantly. It was lovely. And so I said, "Oh, Barbara, look, I've got a winning hand." And Barbara smiled and grinned, and then pushed my nose into the rush carpet and rubbed it. And he said, "Now you have really won." And
now you're
really won.
Really won?
In other words, by bowing down to him and having my nose rubbed it. They didn't have lovely carpets in those days, in case you weren't aware of that. Thank you.
They enjoyed it a lot.
All right. One of the things that also fascinated me about Barbara, again coming back to the caring process, I was very, very thin. I'd had leukemia when I was much younger, and I'd recovered from it. I was living behind the Iron Curtain, and they had a treatment. I don't know what sort it was. This is a long time ago, and they had what was called a gold treatment, and you were injected with gold. And because of the status that I had working behind the Iron Curtain for the East German government, I was allowed to have this specialised treatment. And to this day, I don't know whether I actually ever had leukemia or not, but I had the gold treatment and I didn't have leukemia. I was incredibly thin. And if you've ever seen any of the films that I'm in, I really, really am thin, there's no question. And I'm certainly not thin now, there's no question about that. And Barbara would say to us, you know, at 9 o'clock we begin, and the bell would go, and you were expected to go right in, and he would start. And there would be Mandalay, there would be visitors, there would be myself and Don. And if I tried to sit anywhere else in Mandalay Hall, Barbara would remind me I had to be right next to him on his left-hand side. And they would be having these wonderful discussions, and I'm sorry, I was 20 years old. I'm 20 years old. Then, we were really naive. Now, I've got 12-year-olds who come into my office and I work with them, and they're much more aware of things than I was when I was 20. It's really frightening. And so I was sitting there and I really didn't understand what they were talking about or what was really going on. But I did my best to listen, and Baba would pat me gently and smile. And then all of a sudden he'd stop. And he'd pat me on the head fairly hard and say, "Time for chapatis." And so Baba and I, and all the men, and Francis Brabazon used to get so angry because it was interrupting this really powerful discussion, and I had to go down to the corner, and it's not there anymore. There was a little corner, and the lady had a big stone, and she used to make chapatis. And I had to have not one, not two, but 3 chapatis with ghee and jaggery, and I had to eat them all in front of Baba, which is why I enjoy food now.
So you were eating. Well, did you eat?
Baba said, we stop, Alain has to go eat. And he would come and stand right with me, making sure I had 3 chapatis with jaggery and with ghee, and I had the whole lot. Would you like to translate?
Sure, of course. Wow. Okay, finish it. توی همون زمان که پیش بابا بودن هر موقعی که فاصله میگرفتن میرفتن یه جایی توی اون حال میشستن بابا شاید گفته بیا اینجا کنار پای من میشینی و میگه که چقدر دوره 20 سالگی دوره سالگی بیش از حده یه اسمی که قول منه اینطوریه و حتی من 12 ساله بودم بهتر از دوره 20 سالگی درک داشتم حالیم بود اما 20 سالگی پیش بابا بودم و خیلی چیزا رو نمیفهمیدم میگفتن یه بار که نشسته بوده بابا اینجوری میزنه پس کلش پیش میگه که بلند شو برو اونجا گوشه از اونجا تو میرازا میدونی که زن رو نون میپزن کارگرا چاپاتی درست میکنن میگه که 3 تا چاپاتی بعد فرانسیس باربازم داشته با بابا در مورد یه چیز مهمی صحبت میکرده بحث می‌بینید که مرد خیلی روشن فکری بود بعد داشته در مورد یه چیزی صحبت میکرده بابا قطع میکنه و میگه فرانسیس خیلی هم عصبانی شد ناراحت شد که چرا بخاطر اینکه من چاپاتی بخورم مثلا یه بچه‌ای بابا قطعش کرده ولی میره اونجا و بابا میره کنارش وای میسه که مطمئن بشه ببینه 3 تا چاپاتی که گفته بود میخوره نگی روغن هندونی و جاگری این شکر اصلی هم شکر واقعی اونو با گی و با 3 تا چاپاتی میخوره بابا نظارت میکنه ببینه خورده
Yeah. Great, I love listening to you. Could you translate more and I won't talk?
I was learning one hall that day. I would say everything.
Beautiful, lovely. And it really was funny because all of the gentlemen that were there, or the men that were there, really were, from my perspective, older, learned, wise. I would say it now, I wouldn't have said it then, spiritually advanced, all sorts of wonderful things going on with them. And I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. I just knew the Bible was God. And then I finally found, at 20 years old, what I was looking for. I knew nothing else whatsoever. And they're sitting and they're having these really powerful discussions because then the discourses were being revised for the first time. And I was involved later on at Baba's wish in another way of looking at the discourses. And they would have very powerful discussions about karma, and the men would come in with very important and powerful questions, and I just sit there absolutely amazed that I was allowed even to be there. And I had, in my opinion, nothing to answer. I had nothing to give, I just was there. And Baba loved jokes. And you had to be prepared because when your time came and he said, joke, instantaneously you had to have a joke. And I was the worst person in the world at remembering and telling jokes. And I don't know what he did to me, but I always managed to come up with a joke. And one day I came up with a very complicated one, which was partly in French and partly in English. And he thought this was very, very, very funny. And he said to me, now I am happy. You and Anita Villard are my 2 clowns because you have a way of making me laugh. So I have 2 clowns and my second clown has come to me.
You and?
Anita Villard. She was an American painter who lived in Paris most of her life. But she was one of the very early devotees who came to Baba. Lovely, lovely lady. I couldn't
follow. You made a joke that time? You said a joke to Baba?
Yeah, and I had the only joke I could remember. Well, it was to do with it's not too complicated, but it has to do with the French language. And it's basically the punchline is un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq. And it's the story of these little cats going out and being adventuresome, and the mother cat says, now do not go on the ice. You mustn't go on the ice, and so being little kittens, they are all gallivanting all over the place, and one of them rushes out on the ice, and the other one follows, and then the other one follows, and under trois cats sank. See, now we get to the Baba.
Right. I got it.
Under trois
Cat sank.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sank, went down.
It means they sank through the ice.
They sank through the ice. You must translate that one.
Sank means to fall down
Yeah.
into the water. Sank.
But
To
it's
sink,
using,
to sank.
it's using
sank.
the
Go
French
down.
language only as an English language.
Oh, okay.
So under trois, three cats sank. Under trois cats sank.
It's the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in French.
او این فرنچ فرانسه که میشموره مثل خوندن به زبان گذاشته خوندن
سنگ یعنی غرق شدن.
Yeah, that's it. Sank, yeah.
من یه یه چیزی رو بگم که گفتش که من موقع لوکیمیا یادتون آقای حسنی داشت سرطان خون یعنی سرطان خونه میگه من موقع دارم پیش بابا خیلی لاغر بودم از رو فیلم ها رو موقع رو ببینید و میگه اینو داشتم ولی نمیدونستم خودم ولی باید میگه معالجه کردم خوب شدم
چطوری معالجه کردن؟
میدونم 5-6 سال پیش دیگه دیگه تو انگلیس برحال پیش رفته بود
Okay. Food was a constantly amazing thing. Bob always wanted to know what I wanted to eat. In those days I had a terrible allergy to onions. And can you imagine coming to India and not liking onions? I mean, that would be like going to America and not liking ice cream. There's just no way you can do it. But the food was incredible. And again, I was soulless as much as I had no way to think about it. And Barbara would say, what do you want for lunch tomorrow? And I said, oh, Barbara, I'd love some fish. Well, in those days, the idea of having fish in Ahmednagar was really... But next day I had pomfret. And Barbara came out and put his finger in it. And that was it. It was just the most amazing thing. And there we were. There used to be like a little terrace where the blue bus is now. And that's where we would sit and have our meals. Suppose do you need to do so? You need more for that?
And do you need to translate that?
میگن که بابا خیلی به غذا اهمیت میداد خیلی زیاد میدونی که همیشه میپرسیده تو فیلم ها میبینیم که چی خوری چی میخوری من چک میکردم و میگه من نداره از پیاز بدم میگه من حساسیت داشتم به کسی بیاد تو هند و پیاز نخوری میدونی که اینجا خیلی پیاز میخواد ولی به هر حال بابا یه ازش میپرسه میگه که غذا چی میخوری چی میخوای میگه من ماهی بدم ماهی میخوام میره عادت ماهی و میگه که اصلا تو احمدنگر ماهی اون موقع نبود بهترین ماهی اینجا موقع من ماهی حلوایی پامفر فرش میگن و میگه فردا اینجا بود و دستور داده بود آورده بودن و براش درست کردن
من یه سوالی دارم بابا با دست که حرف میزد میفهمیدم توضیح میدادن این چجوری بوده اطرافیان چطور حالا که دستشون میفهمیدن
هر دوره یک مادری بوده که اینو اشاره ها رو میگفته Do you know what she's asking? She just knew Baba very new, very new in this life. And she's asking when Baba gestured by his hand with his fingers, and how you know, how to understand and how you could read it.
First of all, Erich translated constantly. That was Erich's job. He sat there constantly talking and sharing and translating Baba. You got the sense of some of the words fairly easily after. When you're there in an intense situation, it becomes easier to learn. And I had 2 private interviews when I was alone with Baba, and Baba gestured and made me keep saying the word until I got the right word. Very simple, please don't get me wrong, he wasn't giving me the discourses, he was asking me and telling me certain things he wanted me to know, and he would do the word and I would get it. But it was very simple.
Okay, میگن که گفتم بهتون اون اوایل ایرش بابا بوده همیشه و اون میخونده و میگفته. ولی گاهی وقتا هم اگه یه چیزی رو اشتباه هم میگفته، بابا میگفته نه، دوباره اون علامت رو نشون میداده و ایرش تصحیحش میکرده، میگفته شد. اینجور نبوده که هر چی بگه یا هر کدومشون، بابا نظارت
بابا میشنیده رو داره چی میگه، ولی چون به ضربه زده اونا میگفته در اینو اشتباه بود، دوباره تصحیحش کنید. این نگفتم.
میگه که
یاد گرفته.
نه، البته اون انرژی رو بهش بابا داده بوده، اینطوری نبوده همش رو بخونه. اون معمول دیوتی اون موقع. ولی الان میگه که من 3 مصاحبه خصوصی داشتم با بابا، ولی کسی نبوده تو اتاق، اما میگه حرکت دستش به قدری ساده و سوالاتش ساده بود که اون متوجه شده و جواب میداده و بابا بهش گفته تکرار کن، بگو چی گفتم بهت. و آله میگفته مثلا اگر اشتباه فهمیده بوده، بابا تصحیحش میکرده که سوالا رو بدونه چی جواب میده. I talked to her.
Yeah, okay. Where next? One of the things
You were talking about the pomfret. You were there on that story
Right.
before the question.
Yeah,
So
and-
you were given the pomfret.
And I have to say it was delicious, and I was just so appreciative, but I had no idea then how difficult it would have been to get pomfret all the way from, but if you ask Barbara granted it. One day we were sitting there, and Barbara was talking, literally giving discourses, and after a while I got used to this, and he'd suddenly stop and tap me and say, do you want tea, do you want something to drink? And sometimes he'd ask a question, and one day he said, well, what is it you want? What is it you want? What is it you really want? And I thought this was a Barbara joke, so I said, oh, I don't know, a diamond ring, a mink coat, a Porsche car. And it was just so extraordinary, because he got that I was, in a sense, teasing him and responding. And he said, you'll have all 3, but you have to learn to deal with them. Okay, so that was, and I did eventually get the Porsche and the mink coat and the diamond ring. That was another story. So one day, Barbara said he wanted to see Don and I together, and Erich was there, and he explained about our relationship. And he said that Don was the head and that I was the heart, and that we had a commitment that we were making in front of Barbara to be together, to look after each other, to be responsible for each other. He told Don certain things that Don had to do for me, and he told me certain things I absolutely had to do for Don, and there was no question about it. And I never thought about it, but I was talking about this, I suppose now about 6 months ago, and someone looked at me and said, do you realise Barbara married you to Don? And I said, never even thought, never crossed my mind. He was just giving us directions as to how we were to live our lives together. And he reiterated on several different occasions, remember, Don is head, your heart. So, I'll let you translate that.
So, just because...
So, I was sitting with Don and Barbara, and Barbara looked at me and, trying to capture Barbara's expressions is the most difficult thing, because all of his expressions were very powerful. His smiles were extraordinary. His frowns were very scary. When he was talking on what I would call an intellectual basis, the energy was extraordinary of being around this man, because even though he was God, he was a man in that sense. And so one day he said, all right, what are you going to do with your life? What do you want to do? And Don had prepped me a little bit for this, because he knew it was coming and I didn't. And I thought, no, this is no joke, we're not going to joke now. So I said, Barbara, there are 3 things I'm good at. I love languages. At that point I spoke 7 and read and wrote 5. I love interior design, not in decorating, but how we use space. I was fascinated by how we do space, because I traveled so much and seen so much. And I said, the third thing is, I'm very nosy, I'm very curious about people, I'm curious about what makes people tick. And I'd lived behind the Iron Curtain, I'd been in the Middle East, I'd spent time in Lebanon, I had been all over Europe, I'd been in America, and people fascinated me, all the different cultures absolutely fascinated me. So I presented those three things to Barbara. And Barbara, without a nanosecond, said, people. I want you to work with people. I want you to do what I need done. Psychology does not work. I didn't know what psychology was. I'm sorry, I really didn't.
Psychology does not work?
Does not work as it is now. That's what Barbara was saying. And he reiterated it many times more. The psychology as it is today doesn't work. I need a new psychology, and you're going to do it with others, but you're going to have to do it. It will be very difficult, it will be very challenging, you will have lots of pain, and I want you to do it, and I want you to remember the whole time I am with you no matter what happens.
I am with you.
I will be with you the whole time no matter what happens. All the psychology was working, but it wasn't working at the level he wanted. And he wanted me to be one of the people that started the change in psychology. But he wouldn't tell me how. That was for me to find out with his guidance. And that was my biggest learning piece. Because that's when I understood, after I went through all the things you did for clinical psychology. Don moved to the States, I moved to the States. I went to a very big university and was very uncomfortable, and then I found a wonderful small university with French professors and German professors and all sorts of fabulous people, and I was very, very lucky. And the key piece which I learned, Barbara gave me, and I had to work it out for myself, is in traditional therapeutic intervention, we are given information and we give a diagnostic reaction. And we say, you have this, Robin has that, she has that. That's wrong.
That's wrong.
That is exactly the thing that's wrong. Because what we have to do is take the information and mirror it back to the client and let them find out what's wrong and support them in researching what is wrong with them. It's not for me, and there are all sorts of fabulous definitions, and you have this and she has that, and it doesn't mean a thing. Because what you have to do is you take all the information and you mirror it back. And that's all Barbara did with me the whole time I was with him. Excuse me. All the information got mirrored back. And I have done it, and I have done it, and I've worked with handicapped children, I've worked with alcoholics, male and female, I work with physically handicapped people, I've worked with Inuit children in northern Canada, and every single time I have come up over and over again, you have to mirror it back. And I will give you an example, if I may. When I was living in Japan, I had a woman come to see me, very beautiful, very elegant, incredibly successful woman. She'd taken on one of the European department stores and had licensed it throughout Japan. And I said to her one day, can you tell me why you came to see me, not a Japanese therapist? The Japanese therapy is normally that you sit with a sensei, with a doctor, for 50 minutes. He says nothing, you have peace and quiet, and then you go away leaving your money on the counter as you leave. Nothing is said, no talking whatsoever. And it's quite interesting. And she said she'd come to see me because what she was going to tell me, she couldn't tell anybody because she couldn't say it in Japanese. So I had to be her mirror, and she came in one day and said, I'm ready to tell you. And she sat down, she was beautifully dressed, beautifully made up, and without a tear in her eye, she said, I want to kill my mother.
Oh.
And I'm a foreigner, I'm in Tokyo, and I'm absolutely, what do I do? And she said, I want to tell you the story. And when she was 8 years old, sorry, you need to translate, yeah, go on.
Okay.
Feedback, it's something quite different. It is mirroring back.
Mirroring back.
So that they own that experience and I don't analyze that experience and make it something it's not. Because then my piece gets in the way of what they need. So if you said to me, when I was 6 years old, my great-grandmother's second cousin's first wife hit me with a fish, and ever since then I wanted to kill cats, I have to mirror that back to you. I can't say, oh, diagnostically you are this and this and this, and it's going to take 10 years of therapy.
Or it's bad to kill cats. No. You
But you definitely mustn't kill cats. No, I
But
really
that is amazing. I mean, really, it's amazing to me because that is what the top. I mean, they have schools for children to attend, and this is the kind of thing that they're helping them when they're dyslexic or troubled or anything. They have this kind of wow. That's the new psychology.
There you
That's
go.
beautiful. Okay, go ahead, show.
Okay,
Okay.
you came to hear that the lady was 8 years
And she
old.
was 8 years old, and she said to me, I would like to kill my mother.
Excuse me.
And I really, what did you do? And I thought, okay. So I said, well, that's a very interesting statement. And she said, I'll tell you my story. When I was 8 years old, my mother sold me to my uncle, who was a very, very, very wealthy man. So she would have lots of money, and he would have sex with me until I reached the age of 18 when he threw me out. Her mother did this. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, Baba, what do I do with this one?
Her mother gave her to
And
the
she's
her
sold to
uncle.
the uncle
Sold.
as a sex. Sold. Because
Sold
she got-
her for money.
She got lots and lots and lots and lots of money. And this woman became very successful. She punished the uncle by being more successful than he was. And she said to me, I could not go and see and talk to a Japanese therapist and say, because we cannot say in Japanese, I want to kill my mother. Socially, it's not acceptable to say it, so we can't say it. And that's why there are so many strange murders in Japan, because they cannot express in therapy what they feel. And so I started when I was in Japan teaching Japanese therapists how they could bring out these pieces in their clients, because in Japan there's some very, very strange murders. Very strange. So that's another example of Baba using me from my perspective to do the things that have to be done because we have to change.
How did you treat her?
How did I treat her? Well, I saw her twice a week. I asked questions. I gave her things to write about. I made her go do things. I made her go out to dinner and come back and tell me what the experience was like.
With her mother?
No, just by herself. But you see, the key pieces for me, what Baba taught me, and I have to bring in here another person who was a Baba lover, Hildy Halpin, who also was a fabulous, fabulous guide for me. You have to have the person learn to interpret their situation. So I could say to you, I could say to Robin, I could say to Judy, you had dinner last night, right? Well, what did you have for dinner? And all three of you would tell me what you had. But you wouldn't tell me the experience. You wouldn't say, oh, I felt euphoric, or I was depressed, or I didn't like it, but I didn't want to say anything because Julia cooked the meal for us, and Judy's not a very good cook. That's not, I don't mean that, Judy, don't get worried. But it's that type of thing. And you know, people come in and they say, I've never thought about myself that way before. And Baba was doing this with me. The whole, almost 3 weeks I was here. It never stopped. And then Baba did it in the letters that Marnie sent me. Because I had an open line to Baba. I could write to Baba anytime I could send. We only had telegrams and letters in those days. So, does that give you, so you need to.
بهتون دختر وقتی که 8 ساله بودم مادرم منو به آنکل خودش
همون شبش
فروخته چون اون خیلی پول داره خیلی زیادی گرفته و اون با بچه ارتباط داشته تا زمانی که دیگه بزرگ شده رفته از اونجا ولی با این حال که خیلی زن موفقی بود یعنی موفقیت غیر بزن مادره نه دیگه نبوده خود دختر بسیار چون که خب اون خونه خیلی پول داره خب خیلی براش خرج کرده ولی به هر حال و به خاطر همین از مادرش بیزار بوده و می‌خواست انتقام بگیره گویا از عمو هم یه انتقامی گرفته و بعد میگه که من کاری که کردم بعد نمیتونست اینو تو ژاپن به هیچ روانکاو ژاپنی بگه چون مثلا خیلی بد بوده و میگه بهش گفتم که مثلا برو شام بخور برو گردش برو سینما هر چیزی بعد ازشون پرسیدم رفتی حالا احساس تو حالات چی در واقع برمان و به این شروع کرده به اعتراف کردن so just small question here that then she stopped this type of thinking then
yeah.
Okay
She had carried it since she was 8 years old.
ذهنش عوض میشه
دختری که
یه خانم 8 سال بعد این خانم جوونی بود
And I worked with her for just about 2 years and she really got rid of not only the hatred but she acknowledged what her mother had done and was able actually to forgive her mother. She never saw her mother again. She never wanted to see her mother. I accepted that. But she was able to get rid of that constant thing and in the back of her mind, I'm going to kill my mother. And that's a pretty powerful thing to do. So, I'll tell you a barber joke about letters, all right? I was not there. And Money told me lots of stories, but about Barbara and my. I used to send him funny postcards and funny things. He enjoyed that. Money went in one morning with all the mail as she did, and there was this set of mail and this set of mail and this set of mail. And Barbara looked at Money and said, "Is there a letter from Alain today?" And Money said, "No, Barbara, there isn't." And he said, "Are you sure? Have you been through the mail properly?" And she said, "Yes, Barbara, look, this one, there is no letter from Alain today." And he said, "But Money, are you really sure there's no letter?" And she said, "Yes, Barbara." And Barbara picked out and he said, "A letter from Alain." I don't know what that was about.
What was it then? Money didn't see?
I don't know. I mean, was Barbara conjuring something? Is it possible she didn't see? Who knows? And whether he was teaching her something or teaching me something, I have no idea. It was just one of those lovely Barbara stories. Another Barbara story is that Barbara asked me to go and be part of the English group. And I used to go to their meetings. I put this money into a weekly thing, and if we win in London. And Dina's immediate reaction was, "Well, dear, I'm not sure that's a terribly good idea, but for God's sake, don't tell Charles Belden, he'll be very upset." And I thought, okay, that's rather strange and interesting. So I went to have tea, as I often did, with Will and Mary Beckett, who lived in a fascinating house in what is now part of London and then was the suburbs. And I told them the story and they said, "Oh dear, yes, that's a lovely story, dear. And it's a wonderful thought. But you must never tell Delia. She would be most upset if she heard that." And so I thought, oh, okay. And then later on I went to have tea with, I went to have Sunday lunch with Douglas and Molly Eve. And Douglas was an actuary and a very, very good one. And so over lunch I said, "Well, this is what I'm doing." And he said, "Well, you know, actually the chances of us winning, or you winning anything, are very, very slim. But for God's sake, don't tell Charles or Delia." And that was what the group was like. And there were some very strange characters, bless them. All of whom were Bible followers. And I always said the London group put me ready to deal with the Bible groups as they were when I went to San Francisco, because there were some very strange people left over from the old Fairfax house. Some lovely people, but they were very definitely iconoclastic, bohemian types, so that was very fun. So, It must have been very difficult for Don. I have in some ways, great admiration for Don. I mean, he did take on a responsibility and he did do a lot of the things Barbara said he should do. The one thing that Barbara really got him on was Barbara sent me, Manny sent me a funny card. Manny used to draw pictures and send them to me. And in one of the cards, Manny said, Barbara wants to know, have you got your diamond ring from Don yet? Which I thought was totally, I mean, someone, you know, it just totally off the wall. And so I sent back saying no. And Don was going to India to see Barbara, excuse me, because they were doing the last piece of editing work on the discourses and they wanted everything done properly. And he came back and he said, Saturday we have to go down to the jewellers and we have to get that diamond. So Saturday we went down to the jewellers and we got the diamond, and that's the diamond I'm wearing.
Barbara must have said something to him?
Of course. And one of the funny things was that Manny said to me years later, I like telling this piece, and this is a nice way to conclude talking. I came in '69 to Last Ashram, and I was in the tomb with Anavaz and some other people, and we were weeping our heads off. And Don is outside discussing drug problems with the Luck brothers in Florida, and I went out and I really was cross, I have to be honest. And I really told Don off, and he just absolutely flew into a spigot. And that was the end of our relationship, because Don said, Barbara's dropped the body, therefore all bets are off. And I went back to London and I walked into the flat and Don said, you have 2 weeks to get out. That was that. After 11 years. I must admit I was as hysterical as everybody else. And Don was outside with the Luck brothers discussing drug problems in Florida.
Right outside the door.
Yeah, right outside the door. You got it, Judy.
And Barbara's in the crypt.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, sorry.
Baba's, this is 69 when you're seeing Baba's body?
Last Darshan, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this is the Darshan.
Last Darshan. No, this is Last Darshan, or this is Baba's 7 days when his physical body was there?
And Baba, when the physical body was there.
Okay.
And
This was
It's
during
7 days.
days.
Not the last
Barbara's
Darshan.
body was laying in
Right,
the open
yeah.
crypt.
Right. And so
And they were discussing drugs outside the door of the Samadhi?
yeah. And I objected. That was the end of that. So I got back
I see.
and Don toddled off with my best friend. And spent the rest of his life with me, more or less.
He what with your bed frame?
He spent the rest of his life with my best friend, or was the guy who'd been my best friend. From Paris. I'd known him for donkey's years. Interesting. How Barbara works and operates.
Yes. Fantastic.
And
Were you in love with Don when you split?
to India.
yeah, but I was going to finish the story with money. I didn't come back then until the early 70s. And I was working in Bangkok for, like, sounds very grand, but King and Queen. I was doing a project with mentally handicapped children because they were always put aside and often killed in Southeast Asia. And in the Vietnam War, I was doing research in Cambodia and Laos. And we were rescuing Amerasian children. I worked for the Perles Pak Foundation. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Perles Pak anymore.
Yes.
She sort of vanished. Incredible woman. And I would have to go to Bangkok as a mainstay, and I'd pay the extra, and I'd come for 2 or 3 days, and I'd get to Mumbai airport and rent a car and driver and zoom up. And one time I came up and I went, and they were doing ghazals in the Barber Center, and I just sat there for 6 hours, just absolutely enchanted by these ghazals. It was just amazing. And I would sit, Marnie would sometimes invite me out very early to go out and have breakfast with them. She would ask me all sorts of questions, and one day she said, Alain, I have to tell you something. She said, do you know why you never came back to see Baba after 59? And I said, Marnie, I have no idea. I tried several times, I've been sick, there have been troubles with planes, visas, all sorts of things. And Marnie said, well, Baba did tell me one day, because I asked why you never came back. And Baba said, if I had come back, and if I had requested, as I had when I was with him, to stay there and live with him, he would have granted my request. But he made it emphatically clear I was to be in the West. And she said, that's why you never came back, and that's why you always had the door open to communicate with me.
Oh,
So,
beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
and it was very painful sometimes, because it never quite worked out.
Wow.
And yet money was very clear that Baba had said, because Baba had said to me one day again, you know, what do you really want to do? And I said, Baba, sit here with my begging bowl at your feet. And he hit me very hard on the head, and I mean very hard. It wasn't gentle at all. And he said, if I wanted you here, you would be here. Your destiny, you are to do my work in the West. And he was very emphatic about it. And I didn't know until, I think Mani told me in 1974, that she'd asked several times why I'd never come back on Baba's death. But if I had come back and asked him again if I could stay, he would have had to say yes. Same as Baba said they would. And they moved to different premises. And I was in the contact for quite some while, and I spent a lot of time looking after Delia, sarcastic and very bitchy, and to say I got absolutely no thanks whatsoever, but everybody else would. Pete Townsend, for example, he did this most marvelous, and those of us who took care of Delia got absolutely no thanks whatsoever. It was very funny. Sarcastic Delia story. She lived in this wonderful residence run by nuns, and it really was beautiful compared to where she was before. And I used to take food, I'd take her out to lunch, I'd make sure she was okay in her funny place. And here she was in this wonderful place, being looked after by the nuns. You'd walk in and they'd say, would you like a cup of tea, darling? And you come to, oh, she's Miss Delia, she's fabulous, she's absolutely wonderful. And you go up to, I get no attention, no one comes to see me, no one loves me, I'm stuck here. And these women were, and all of the people in and out like it was going out to start. So he was very well looked after. Mm-hmm. But it was, and then the thing grew. I should say that, you know, I was looking for the money when Don and I went to live in London. And again, I suppose I'm being slightly sarcastic here. The first little Baba Centre that was going was an office that Pete Townsend had on Wardour Street. And Don and I paid the rent on that, I think, for about 18 months before they moved to Eccleston Square.
Pete Townsend, you paid the rent on Pete Townsend's place?
Yes, a little office.
And he was making all that money with the who?
Well, but he wasn't making the money because the manager was pinching it all. So, but Don and I said we'll pay the rent, and we did very, very clearly. So there's some of the interesting little pieces. Well, when Don and I separated. When Don said, threw me out, he said he would make sure that I had the finances to go to school to do a PhD. And I found a school in England that was the only school licensed to do a degree in clinical psychology. And we got into the first year, the 2-year course, and the new government decided that clinical psychology wasn't a science, so they cancelled the course. So we have to put after our little pieces that we have a PhD, NC, not complete, because they wouldn't let us complete it. So then I didn't want to stay in England, and so I went to Canada, and there were no Baba lovers in Canada. I was completely alone for 2 years, and I worked like crazy. I learned so much and did so much. That was, and then I went to. Baba said, I love you, I'm going to give you every experience I can. You're going to be working from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, and I was. I was appointed to Pierre Elliott Trudeau's Committee on Mental Health and Canada's a vast place. I mean, it goes all the way up there, and, as well as east and west. And it was an extraordinary, and I worked with a children's hospital with what used to be called Inuit people in Churchill. It was fabulous, but it was, I was totally alone. 2 years, just work. I worked at the Jewish General Hospital, the children's. One of, who was it? Somebody had a niece who was there. And I met her, and she wasn't in the slightest bit interested in Baba and thought her aunt was nuts. So that was the end of that. But
Wasn't that Katie and Go here?
no, this was.
They had a Canadian.
Who was the brain is going, or I'm getting sleepy or something. But who was the English lady who lived at Myrtle Beach? Kitty Davey had a niece who lived there, and I went to her. They were very nice. They couldn't have been nicer people, but they just weren't the size of an interest. That's for another day. Now I need to be driven home because I've got people coming.
Thank you so much. Take care, Papa.